Our next presenter is Tony Hutter from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Oh, yeah. So from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and Tony is going to talk about the release process for the various ZFS versions. So right now you're going to talk about release of Linux 1.0, right? And hopefully we can have a timeline on that. Anyway, all joking aside, Tony is going to talk about what goes into that thought process of what goes on the release and what kind of things that are being considered. So please welcome Tony.
Thank you. So yeah, I think some of you have seen this before. This was a presentation I gave at the ZFS user conference back in April. But it all holds true today. So yeah, I want to go over ZFS releases. I want to talk about the ZFS release process, how you can get your code into the next release, the ZFS release timeline. And I also want to go over just some general stats about our ZFS on Linux user base. So shameless plug, I work at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. We've got over 100 petabytes of disk running ZFS. We run ZFS underneath Lustre. So on our older machines, we're running Lustre 2.5 with ZFS 0.65.11, I think. And then on our newer systems, we're running Lustre 2.8 on top of ZFS 0.7.9. So we usually run the latest release branch. And we're starting to transition to Lustre 2.10. So when I started putting together this presentation, I talked to Brian, and he found a really cool script that could go through all the stats on the ZFS on Linux page, or go through all the server logs on the ZFS on Linux page and put together a bunch of really cool stats and graphs that I think you guys are going to be interested in. And the first thing we did was we wanted to see how many people are using ZFS on Linux. So what we did was we looked at how many people were downloading the repo md.xml. And we looked at how many people were doing that every day. And we multiplied that by 7 because we know that Yum updates once a week. And what we found was that there's roughly 28,000 updating ZFS installs out there. And this is only for the OSs we support, so only CentOS and Fedora. And this does not count Ubuntu, Gentoo, Debian, nor does it count anybody that's updating locally. Like at the lab, we update from a local server. But I think that's a pretty healthy number. If you look at which repo md.xml they're downloading, we can figure out what OSs people are using. And what we found was overwhelmingly people are using CentOS, specifically one of the CentOS 7 flavors, but at about over 75%. And this is broken out 2 different ways in this graph, by unique visitors and by unique hits. And I don't know which one is more accurate, so I just included them both. But they both kind of tell the same story. And then the next thing we did was we geolocated all of the IP addresses that are downloading from the website, and we were able to break it down by region. And I thought this was really neat. You can see the biggest users are North America with 45%, followed by Europe at 31%, unknown at 12%, so maybe IPs that can't be geolocated, followed by Asia, Oceania, South America, and Africa. And then I further broke those out into the top 3 regions. And so here's a graph of North America. And again, the y-axis is the percentage of worldwide unique visitors. So you can see that 40% of all visitors to the page are from the United States, followed by Canada, and then I basically took the top 10 here. But the interesting thing was, even though these other countries at the end are tiny, they're still there. And what you find when you actually look at these stats is that most countries, even no matter how small they are, what the population is, there's at least one download of ZFS. So it's fun to look at those. You're looking at Europe. Germany's the top at 7%, followed by the UK at 5%, Russia at about 2.5%, France, Netherlands, Sweden at about 1.5, then Spain, Italy, Switzerland, Poland. So it's a bit more distributed in Europe. Looking at Asia, Middle East, Japan's the biggest at about 3.5%, followed by China, a little over 1%, South Korea, Taiwan, Israel, and everyone else is about 0.5% or below. And again, nearly all countries are represented here. Like you'd see Iran in here, you'd see Iraq. So the other thing I looked at was, okay, most people do a yum install ZFS, but how many people are actually building from tarballs? And what we found was that between 2,000 to 4,000 people download the tarballs per release. And the other thing I noticed was that very few people are downloading the SHA-256 signature. So I guess people trust us. This is a graph showing the 0.7.6 release, and I just wanted to show here that you do see a spike right when the release comes out, right about there. So a lot more people are watching and downloading the latest releases. The other thing you see here is that these troughs are the weekends. So that tells me that most people that are using ZFS on Linux are using it professionally, and they're downloading it during the week rather than guys just working on their NAS boxes at home. So this is a graph of our commit frequency. So we average about 11 commits a week, about 1.6 a day. And I think that's a pretty healthy amount. We're not just flooding GitHub here. And these are the top 10 committers of 2017. I think at least half of them are in this room. One of the interesting things was that in 2017, there were only 48 unique committers. And I thought that was really interesting because you've got 20,000 people using ZFS on Linux, and then it's just a very small group of developers that are making that happen. So it just shows how useful our work is to everybody else. Here I made a graph of the 07 release branch, both the RC and the regular release branch. And originally I made this graph with all the ZFS releases, but it was so long that it just wasn't even visible on the slide. So I broke it down into 07. And the takeaways here are the 07 or 070 RC branch took about 10.5 months to stabilize. So keep that in mind with 08 RC. And then I typically do the 07 stable releases every 6 weeks or so, with the exception of the last release. So you can kind of get an idea of when to expect the next release from here. So when do we put out point releases? Well, there's no fixed schedule. It's more on demand. And the main reasons we do it are there's a new kernel version that breaks all the interfaces and we have to fix them again. That's number one. A new version of Fedora or CentOS, which usually comes with a new compiler that's a lot more strict and complains about a lot more things. Or our patch set for the next release just gets too big. And we just say, you know what, we just need to put out a new release. There's too many things people want in there, or there's too many bugs that we need to fix. So how do you get your code in the next point release? So you put out a pull request, it gets accepted, it goes in the master branch. So what you do is you go to your pull request, and on the side here, on the right side, there's a projects link. You click on that, and that'll bring up this projects dialog box. And in here, you'll see the latest release. And this is an old slide, so it's 0.7.8, but the latest branch would be in there, and you just click on that. And what that'll do is put this pull request into a queue for us to review to pull into the next release. And so this is the project page. This is a list of all of the pull requests that we're expecting to put in the next branch. So if you're wondering, okay, what's going to go in 07.11, you could go look in here. We don't limit only to these pull requests. It could be that one of these pull requests has a couple dependencies that we need to pull in first, so we'll pull those in. You're welcome to put any pull requests you want in here, but the things that we're going to not accept are things like very large, potentially destabilizing packages. We're looking more for pull request or bug fixes, or really small patches that are benign, or really small features that are pretty benign. So this is a very old slide. I don't know if all of you saw, but the 080 RC1 branch was released on Friday. So there's a lot more in it than what I have here. These are some of the heavy hitters: device removal, metadata allocation classes. DRAID unfortunately didn't make it, but the one we're really happy about, merging the SPL into ZFS, is in. Yes. And we've already merged like encryption, sequential resilvers, channel programs. There's a lot of big features that are already in 070 that will be in 07 or 080 as first-class citizens. So I think people are happy about that. And I'll be happy because it'll be really easy to cherry pick all the new patches into the 081 release. Okay, these are the links to the releases page and the projects page, just for completeness. I did want to talk about the process that I go through to put together a release, because there's a lot of stuff I have to do. So basically, when we want to put out a release, I'll open up that projects page, and I'll go through all the patches, and I'll look for all of the commit hashes. I'll put those in a text file, sort them by commit date, and then I'll start cherry picking them in. And a lot of them are going to conflict because we don't have all of the code from 07 in the release branches. So I try to fix all those conflicts. And typically I do all this on the latest Fedora, like Fedora 28. And then once I have all those pulled in, I'll do a sanity build on Ubuntu with the absolute bleeding edge kernel to make sure that it'll build against the latest release kernel. And then I'll also build it on Fedora or CentOS 6 to just make sure that it'll build on an older OS. Then you'll see a pull request from me come up with all of the patches cherry picked in, basically saying like, okay guys, this is what we expect for the new release. And people can comment on that and say, you know what, I want you to pull this patch in, or you might want to wait for this patch to go in first and take that. And the other benefit of putting it in a pull request is that you get to have BuildBot test everything. After we're happy with that pull request, let me check my time. After we're happy with all that, then I'll package everything up on a build server that we have. So we have an internal build server that you copy the code over there, run a bunch of scripts. It'll build all the packages for Fedora currently 26 through 28 and CentOS 6 and 7. It'll build all of the RPM repository data. I'll sign all the packages. I'll sign the metadata. And then I rsync that over to a staging server. And this is basically the equivalent of what you guys do a yum update from. So I test everything out on there. I load up a bunch of VMs in Amazon. So all the ones we support, Fedora and CentOS. I'll make sure I can do a yum install. I'll make sure I can upgrade from an older version. And then I also have a test that'll try to download the source code and build everything from source. So that's what goes into a release. And Brian has been working on a way to build the packages in BuildBot that's going to save us a lot of time. This is something that we're working on that we want to do for the next release so that we don't have to do as many of these manual steps. And it would also be nice if for any given pull request, you could have the RPMs available. So like a lot of the other projects out there, they'll build nightly RPMs. And we don't do that, but that would be really nice to have. And I think that would make it a lot easier for people to test. So that's it. Again, on Friday, we released 0710 and 080 RC1. So please bang on those and install away. Any questions?
What happened with 071?
071?
It was immediately after '07 on the timeline you had.
070. Yeah, it was right after the 070. I can't remember what happened there. Maybe something broke. I can't remember. Yeah.
For Lightnings, are you only planning on doing RPM, or are you going to have also devs for Debian and Ubuntu?
Oh, I got to repeat these questions. So the question was, are we going to do nightlies only for RPMs? And I mean, we're still working on it, but right now it's just the RPMs because that's all we officially support.
Two things. One, it should be pretty easy to convert the RPM to Debian with Alien, which is, I think, how we just build them if you do make package. I think it just does it. The other question I had was, you talked about D-Rate not being quite in. Is there, like, is there stuff we can do to, like, we have a lot of developers in this room. Is there anything we can do to get that pushed in? Like, if there's still time.
I don't know the status on D-Raid right now. You could ping Brian. I don't know if you have an update.
You can definitely help. We appreciate the help. I don't know if it's going to make the OA tag or not yet, but hopefully it does.
Is the next step still that it needs to be rebased?
Yeah, it needs.
Pretty old, right?
It's pretty old.
Yeah.
It needs to be rebased on master, and people need to reconcile it with some of the new features that went in.
But I mean, that would be a pretty, that's at least a well-defined task if somebody wants to bite that off.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a little bit more development work to do as well.
If anyone's interested in that, I'm happy to work with whoever wants to help.
And for those online, they were saying that number one, D-Raid needs to be rebased with the latest code. And a lot of testing.
So how is it working with upstream or I guess downstream distributors of ZFS on Linux like Ubuntu and other Linux distributions? Are they getting patches fed back? Are they updating on your releases, or are they kind of independent streams?
As far as I know, with Ubuntu, they take one of our point releases and make it work. They make their own packages and kind of do their own thing. And so they're not really updating with all of our point releases.
Yeah, I can provide you more feedback afterwards if you want to know about it.
Any other questions?
Is it possible to build binary packages for Fedora instead of source DKMS packages?
The question was, can you build binary packages for Fedora instead of DKMS? You can.
So why isn't it done?
Because it's easier just to do the DKMS. I mean, I know at the lab we don't use Fedora, we use CentOS, and we use the KABI packages. So that's like our incentive for doing it. But you can build a KABI of Fedora releases.
If this is a longer inappropriate question or answer, don't answer it, but I thought the problem with the reason Ubuntu won't package ZFS is because of licensing, so why doesn't Red Hat have that problem? Why doesn't Fedora have that problem?
Ubuntu does package it.
Ubuntu, yeah, it does.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
sorry, yes. But that was the big hub of that. They wouldn't. Okay, forget it. We're done. In yours.
All right, anything else?
There is something I found confusing, that people, when download from master ZFS, the meta file refers to version 0.70, which is always confusing because they try to install with SPL 0.70. So do you have plans to update that, or I'm touching perhaps something that historically has been there?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. I mean,
So tackle that a little bit. So now that they're merged together, that problem kind of solved itself. But yes, we could probably bump the version like after we had
The
it.
version of meta, yeah.
yeah, so the question was, why don't we bump the meta file on master, but we do for the release branches? And I guess the answer is, like, we probably should do that.
is more of a comment than a question, relating to the frequency of the releases. I think ODOT 7.0, it had a pool corrupting bug involving large D nodes and multi-threaded allocator that had to be pulled in right away. And I think the other ones that are really tight had that ZAP bug, which was reverted. Or was that off the list? I can't remember.
This only goes up to like February.
But ODOT 7.0, it was definitely some issue involving large D nodes and the multi-threaded allocator. So I'm just mentioning that because somebody asked about ODOT 7.0. Thank you.
Yeah, so for those online, the 071 you're saying came out because of a problem in the D nodes, multi-threaded allocation of D nodes, you said?
It was an interaction between large D nodes and the multi-threaded allocator.
Interaction between large D nodes and multi-threaded allocator, okay.
Yeah.
Good memory.
To the best of my knowledge, that's that and the ZAP problem were the only two that could create corrupted rules with a known bug in ODOT 7.
Yeah, so you're saying that the 070 and the 077 were the only two that could cause corruption, and that's why there were point releases right after them. Yeah, that's correct. All right, anyone else? Yeah?
Could you touch upon a little bit on the testing for the release?
So,
What's on for the testing for release?
sure. So, like I said, once I've cherry-picked all the patches, I put out a pull request for that, and that'll run through BuildBot. So basically, it gets the whole standard BuildBot testing. And then after we put together all the packages, I have a script that goes and tests to make sure that you can install all the RPMs on all the different platforms that we support and build from source.
Is there any kind of like performance regression testing infrastructure or any plans for that in the future?
The question was, is there any plans for performance regression testing infrastructure? And I'm not the person to answer that. You could talk to Brian afterwards.
Well, the answer is there is plans, but not concrete ones.
The answer is there is plans, but not concrete ones. There's always plans. All right, anything else? All right, thank you very much.